It was the kind of summer afternoon that could melt time. The sun hung heavy over the sky like a smoldering forge, heating every surface until the air shimmered above the asphalt. I had just settled into my favorite porch chair, a glass of iced tea in hand, condensation beating down the side like it knew something was about to go wrong. My pool, nestled quietly behind a row of rose hedges and shaded by tall oaks, gleamed like a slice of paradise, unused, untouched mine. A soft breeze stirred the wind chimes, their tinkling melody briefly masking the first foreign sound. A distant car door slamming. I didn't think much of it. My house was tucked down a gravel path, far enough off the main road that visitors weren't common. So when a second slam followed, then the chatter of children's voices, I sat up straighter. By the time I heard the unmistakable splash of water, my spine had already stiffened. I stood, walked calmly down the porch steps, and moved around the hedge to get a look at the pool area. And what I saw stopped me cold. 2 women, heavy-set and nearly identical, lounged in reclining pool chairs like they owned the place. Their swimsuits clung tightly to their broad frames, and each wore an oversized sun hat that shadowed their faces but couldn't hide the smugness in their posture. 5 children darted between the pool and the lawn, diving, cannonballing, spraying water from squirt guns. My carefully trimmed garden was soaked. The snack table I kept under the awning had been raided, juice boxes ripped open, a bag of chips crushed and spilled onto the pavement. I took a slow breath, then stepped forward. "Excuse me," I called, loud enough to pierce the splashing and shouting. One of the women turned her head lazily. "Oh, hey," she said, waving like we were old friends. "Hope you don't mind. We just needed to cool off." I blinked. "Mind? You're in my backyard." The other woman lowered her phone and pushed her sunglasses up. "Relax, you weren't using it. We figured it'd be no harm." "No harm," I repeated, trying to keep my tone measured. "This is private property." The first one, she had a small tattoo on her shoulder and a scowl curling under her smugness, sat up straighter. "You should put up a sign or something then. We assumed it was just one of those shared spaces." I narrowed my eyes. "There's a fence. And a gate with a latch. What part of that looks public to you?" She rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic. We're only here for a bit." I looked at the kids again. One was already inside the screened porch, tracking water across the floor with muddy feet. Another had taken one of my lawn chairs and flipped it over to use as a fort. "I'd like you all to leave now," I said. The woman with the phone, brunette, thick arms crossed tightly, snorted. "It's just water. You act like we're breaking in or something." "You are breaking in," I said flatly. "And you're trespassing." The kids kept playing, oblivious. One of them knocked over a potted plant. The ceramic shattered against the stone tiles. No apology came from either woman. The first one stood up slowly, wiping her hands on a towel. "Look, I'm Linda. This is my sister Brenda. We live just a few blocks over. Our kids needed to cool off. We saw the pool. The gate wasn't locked, and here we are. It's not that deep." "Not that deep," I said. "This isn't a misunderstanding. This is deliberate disrespect." Brenda stepped forward now, eyes narrowed. "You really gonna kick out 5 kids in this heat? That's cold." I stared at them for a long moment, my jaw set. "You have 60 seconds to gather your kids and leave, or I'm calling the cops." There was a flicker of something in Brenda's eyes, surprise, maybe. But Linda recovered quickly. "Oh, please. The police have better things to do than babysit entitled homeowners." I didn't reply. I turned and walked back toward the house, letting the screen door snap shut behind me. Inside, my pulse was thudding in my ears. I watched from the kitchen window as the sisters gestured wildly, arguing with each other, calling for the kids half-heartedly while continuing to lounge like they had all day. The disrespect was like a splinter beneath my skin. They weren't sorry. They weren't even pretending to be. In fact, they acted like they belonged here. That's when the idea hit me. I moved to the laundry room and grabbed the heavy-duty chain and padlock I used for the tool shed. Quietly, I slipped back outside, circling around the side of the house where they couldn't see me. I approached the pool gate from the opposite direction, moving with the silence of someone who'd had just enough. The gate was ajar, just slightly. I pulled it shut, looped the chain through the metal bars, and clicked the padlock into place. The sound was almost satisfying. Then I walked back to the porch, sat down in my chair, and resumed sipping my tea. It took another 5 minutes before they noticed. Linda was the first to approach the gate. I saw her reach for the handle, pull, and pause. Her brows furrowed. She rattled it harder. Then she called out, "Hey, did you just lock us in?" Brenda looked up, confused. "What are you talking about?" "The gate's chained. He locked the damn gate." Brenda stormed over and gave a yank, confirming it herself. She turned toward me like a locomotive in slow motion, steam coming off her skin. "Are you serious right now?" she shouted. I looked up lazily. "You said you'd only be a bit. I figured this would help you keep your word." Linda stomped up to the gate, grabbing the bars like she might shake them loose. "This is illegal. You can't hold us here." "You're not being held," I said. "You're just being prevented from leaving the way you came in, illegally. We have children." Brenda snapped. I noticed. Brenda pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police. Let's see how they like a man imprisoning 5 kids and 2 women." I raised an eyebrow. "Please do. I'm sure they'll be thrilled to hear your side." She hesitated. I could see it in her face. There was a sliver of doubt. Linda, meanwhile, had started shouting at her kids, telling them to get out of the water. But they were having too much fun to care. One of them spit water from their mouth like a fountain, right into their sibling's face. Another screamed with laughter. The women were unraveling. "You think this is funny?" Brenda growled at me. "No," I said, setting down my glass. "But I do think it's fair." She looked down at her phone, trying to dial. "Ugh, it's dead." "Great." Linda turned from the gate. "What do you want? You want us to beg? Is that it?" "No. I just want my property respected. But that ship sailed the moment your kid dragged wet footprints across my kitchen." Linda threw her arms up in exasperation. "This is insane. You're insane." I stood. "I'm going to call the police now. When they get here, we'll let them decide." She glared. "You'll regret this." But I didn't feel regret. I felt clarity. I stepped back inside, dialed the local non-emergency police line, and calmly explained the situation. Trespassers. Children present. Gate now locked for safety. Requesting assistance to resolve a property violation. They promised someone would be dispatched shortly. As I hung up and glanced out the window again, Linda and Brenda were pacing around the pool, barking orders at their kids and each other, alternating between anger and confusion. The sun was still blazing. The air was thick, but something had shifted. The power was mine now, and I intended to hold on to it. The heat hadn't broken, and neither had the tension. As the cicadas screamed from the trees, and the sun sat like a curse overhead, the 2 sisters paced the pool deck like trapped animals. Every few seconds, one of them would throw a desperate glance toward the locked gate, their confidence slowly peeling away beneath the weight of the situation. The calm satisfaction I felt on the porch was only matched by the rising chaos unraveling just 30 feet away. Linda made the first attempt at regaining control, her face red and damp. She marched up to the gate again and grabbed it with both hands, pulling and rattling like it might somehow undo itself if she shook it hard enough. Metal clanged. Nothing gave. Her frustration only deepened. "This is stupid," she hissed. "Absolutely stupid." Brenda sat on the edge of a lounger now, legs spread, one sandal dangling from her foot. She had given up trying to corral the kids, who continued splashing and laughing, completely unaware of their mother's growing panic. Her face was twisted in a mixture of anger and disbelief, but underneath it was something else: uncertainty. For the first time, she was beginning to understand they weren't in control. I watched silently, arms folded. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Linda turned toward me. "You've made your point. Now open the gate." I didn't respond. Her voice sharpened. "This is false imprisonment." Still, I said nothing. Just watched, sipping my tea. Brenda stood slowly, the chair creaking beneath her. "You think you're clever?" You think you're going to get away with this little stunt? I leaned back in my chair. You broke into my property. You helped yourself to my pool. You insulted me when I asked you to leave. You're lucky this is the worst of it. Linda muttered something under her breath, something sharp, but Brenda held up a hand to silence her. Let's just call someone to come get us, she said, pulling out her phone again. She tapped the screen once, then again. Her mouth twisted. Dead. It's completely dead. Linda snatched hers from the table beside her chair. Mine too. It overheated. She pressed the power button several times, then gave up and tossed it down. This is ridiculous. We need to get out of here. The kids were starting to notice the change. One climbed out of the pool and asked for a snack. Another needed to use the bathroom. They tugged at their mother's arms, whined about towels, tried to open the gate themselves. The reality of the situation was slowly catching up to them. Brenda turned her frustration on the nearest child. I told you not to eat all the granola bars. You didn't listen. The child flinched, and Brenda waved them away with a tired groan. I stood and walked slowly down the porch steps, pausing at the edge of the path that led to the pool. They both turned toward me at once, as if summoned by gravity. I've called the police, I said, voice calm. They'll be here soon. Linda let out a sharp, ugly laugh. What do you think they're going to do? Applaud you? No, I said. But they will escort you off my property, and likely cite you for trespassing. Brenda's voice sharpened. You're enjoying this? Yes, I said, without hesitation. Yes, I am. Her face flushed, but she didn't have a comeback. Not a good one. Linda, however, wasn't ready to concede. You're not exactly a saint in this situation. Locking people in, calling the cops on mothers with children. You'll be the one answering questions. Let's find out, I said simply. She stomped away from the gate and plopped down onto the lounge chair again, muttering curses under her breath. Brenda paced along the fence line like a bear testing the bars of its cage. I could climb this, she muttered. You could, I said. But then you'd be fleeing the scene of a crime. She froze mid-step, turned and glared. You really think you're that smart, huh? I don't have to be smart, I said. I just have to be patient. They didn't like that. The next 30 minutes crawled by like a storm waiting to break. The children grew more restless. One cried after stepping on a bee. Another sat sulking beneath a towel, having realized there would be no ice cream, no trip to the store, no happy ending today. The mothers grew silent. The sweat on their skin now mixed with a visible sheen of stress. Every sound of a car engine or barking dog snapped their attention toward the gate, only to be disappointed again. They weren't just trapped, they were exposed. This wasn't a backyard anymore. It was a stage, and they were the stars of their own humiliation. Finally, the moment came. The low rumble of tires on gravel. A flicker of red and blue in the distance. I stood without a word and stepped out toward the driveway. From the porch, I heard Brenda whisper something sharp to Linda. A scramble of movement followed. They tried to rally the kids, drying them off with spare towels, yelling names, straightening hats. The panic now was different, less defiant, more defensive. I met the officer halfway down the drive. He was young, but carried himself like someone who'd seen 100 stories like this unfold. He introduced himself, asked me to confirm my address, and then said, "So I hear you've got some unexpected guests?" I nodded. Backyard. Pool. 2 women, 5 children. He glanced toward the rear of the house. They locked in. I secured the gate. I didn't want them leaving before this got resolved. He gave me a sideways look. Did they threaten you? No. But they refused to leave. I asked 3 times. He nodded. Let me talk to them. We rounded the back of the house together. The officer stepped into view first, and both Linda and Brenda visibly stiffened. Ladies, he called, professional but firm. Everything okay here? Brenda started walking forward, face already twisted into a rehearsed expression of victimhood. Officer, thank God. This man locked us in. He's been threatening us, filming us, refusing to let us leave. Ma'am, he interrupted, holding up a hand. Let's start with the basics. Are you aware this is private property? Linda stepped in now. We didn't know. The gate was open. Were you invited? They didn't answer. The silence answered for them. The officer turned back to me. Do you have a gate lock? I held up the padlock key. Just used it today. He nodded. Okay. Do you want to press charges? Not yet, I said. But I want them formally trespassed. He turned back. All right, ladies. I'm going to need your IDs. That's when Linda's tone changed. Are you serious right now? Yes, ma'am. This is still a formal report. Brenda looked like she was going to argue, but she paused. Thought better of it. Instead, she dug through her beach bag and pulled out a soggy wallet. Linda did the same, jaw tight. While he ran their names through the radio, I stood by the gate, just out of earshot. The officer returned a minute later, frowning slightly. Miss Brenda, he said, you have 2 unpaid citations. Looks like one was for illegal parking in a fire lane, the other for expired tags. And Miss Linda, your driver's license is expired. Brenda paled. That has nothing to do with this. It's still on record, he said. I'll need to log it. The kids began to gather around their mothers now, confused and worried. One of them started crying, asking what was going on. Neither woman had an answer. I leaned casually against the fence post and said, you should have just walked away when I asked. Brenda glared at me with every ounce of venom she had left. You won't get away with this. I already did. The officer looked back and forth between us, then pulled out a citation book. Ladies, I'm issuing you both a formal warning. You are not permitted to return to this property. Any future entry will result in immediate arrest. Linda was shaking now, not from fear, but from rage she didn't know where to put. Her fists clenched, but her voice was thin. You've made a huge mistake. The officer handed them each a copy of the citation. Let's not make it worse. They gathered their things in silence, herding the children toward the unlocked gate as the officer finally removed the chain. Each step they took was heavy with embarrassment. They didn't say another word to me, but just before they reached the driveway, Linda turned over her shoulder. This isn't over. I smiled. I hope not. Because what they didn't know was that the real fun hadn't even started yet. The Karen sisters left my driveway that day walking stiffly, their dripping wet flip-flops slapping the pavement as they herded their confused, sunburnt children ahead like embarrassed parade marshals. The police cruiser idled at the curb for another minute after they'd gone, just long enough for the officer to scribble down a final note, offer me a polite nod, and say, you did the right thing. Most people would have just yelled and let it slide. I thanked him, but I wasn't smiling. Not yet. Because I had the feeling this wasn't over. And I wasn't the kind of person who liked leaving stories unfinished. The neighborhood grapevine buzzed almost immediately. By the next morning, I had 2 messages from neighbors, one asking if I was okay, the other thanking me for dealing with those women. Apparently, Linda and Brenda weren't exactly beloved around here. They'd been spotted pushing shopping carts full of pool noodles through other people's backyards before. Rumors floated of other parties, other property lines ignored. I even got a call from the retired couple 2 doors down, who said the sisters once used their garden hose to fill up a kiddie pool because the water pressure was better. That made me chuckle. These 2 weren't just entitled. They were habitual offenders. But the more I learned, the more one fact nagged at me. They still didn't believe they'd done anything wrong. If the way Linda sneered at me over her shoulder was any indication, they felt victimized. Like I'd ruined their weekend, embarrassed them in front of their children, dragged their names through the mud. That's the danger with people like them. They twist consequences into cruelty and disrespect into martyrdom. And sure enough, the retaliation didn't take long. 3 days later, I came home from work to find a stack of fast food wrappers dumped by the edge of my mailbox. At first, I thought it was just random litter. But then I noticed the receipt jammed into a cup dated just an hour earlier, with a name printed at the top, Brenda. Petty. Obvious. Desperate. I threw the trash away and installed a motion camera at the front gate that very night. The next morning, someone threw an empty soda can into my front yard. Then a bag of half-eaten chips. Always the same brands, the same mess. I never saw who did it until Thursday. That night, the camera caught a blurry video of Linda herself. Hair up in a messy bun, oversized hoodie, bare feet on my gravel path. She tiptoed up to the gate, paused, looked around, and then dumped a grocery bag full of what looked like damp towels and snack wrappers right over the fence. Her expression wasn't angry. It was smug, like she was teaching me a lesson. But the best part wasn't the act. It was the fact that she didn't notice the blinking red light just above her head. By Friday morning, I had 3 days' worth of footage, all stored neatly in my phone, each clip showing either Linda or Brenda sneaking around my property like raccoons with attitude. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Because this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was an opportunity. I uploaded the first video to my private neighborhood Facebook group with a short caption. Just a friendly reminder to respect your neighbor's space. Not everyone takes trespassing lightly. Stay classy, folks. The clip wasn't edited. I didn't need drama. The raw footage of a grown woman, barefoot and scowling as she hurled garbage into someone else's yard, said more than any paragraph ever could. The comments started pouring in. Wait, is that Linda from Sycamore Lane? OMG, I knew it. She used to let her kids climb our tree like it was a jungle gym. Why would anyone do this? Just insane behavior. In less than an hour, the post had over 80 comments. A few neighbors reached out privately to say they'd had similar problems. Others offered to help build a taller fence. One even said they'd seen Brenda letting her kids relieve themselves in someone's side yard during a barbecue. By noon, someone else had posted a second video, taken from their Ring camera, of Brenda stomping across their lawn in a fit, yelling at her kid for stepping on some idiot's flower bed. She hadn't noticed the doorbell cam either. The sisters were getting exposed from all angles. But what happened next? That was the real cherry on top. Saturday morning, I sat on my porch with coffee, watching the sunlight stretch across the lawn. Birds chirped. The sky was soft and blue. Peace. Finally. Then my phone buzzed, a notification from the neighborhood group. New post. A woman named Teresa had uploaded a photo of Linda's car. It was parked illegally across the sidewalk in front of a fire hydrant. She'd reported it. Towed. Gone within the hour. A few posts later, someone shared a clip of Brenda screaming at a gas station attendant because the air machine didn't take coins. She was wearing the same sun had she'd lounged in by my pool. People were starting to see the full picture. Not just one bad day, but a pattern of entitled chaos. And as they connected the dots, their patience evaporated. By the end of the weekend, Linda and Brenda had been removed from the group. Their kids were quietly uninvited from a local playdate group. And someone even started a Karen Watch thread to log further sightings. It wasn't harassment. It was accountability. Digital justice in a suburban jungle. But I wasn't done. I edited the security footage into a neat 3-minute video. Added titles, timestamps, and a calm voiceover. No yelling. No name calling. Just facts. I uploaded it to my public TikTok account with the caption, "When they break into your pool, then try to get even." It took off like wildfire. Within a day, the clip had 60,000 views. Comments flooded in from people who'd had their own run-ins with entitled neighbors. Some laughed. Some were angry. Some shared advice about security systems and legal options. But the overwhelming consensus was clear. I wasn't in the wrong. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. But Linda and Brenda knew. The very next day, a black SUV pulled up in front of my house. Out stepped an older woman, maybe 70 or 80, thin frame, dressed in a beige cardigan and orthopedic shoes. Her silver gray hair was pulled back in a no-nonsense bun. She moved with the certainty of someone who'd raised hellions before. She knocked on the door. I opened it, cautious. "Are you the man who dealt with Linda and Brenda?" "I suppose that depends on how you define dealt with," I said. Her lips thinned. "I'm their mother." I said nothing. She sighed. "I just wanted to say thank you." That caught me off guard. "Excuse me." She adjusted her purse strap and looked out toward the yard. Those two have been insufferable since they were teenagers. Entitled, rude. Thought the world owed them every drop of lemonade and free pool water it had. You did what I never could. I opened the door a little wider. You want to come in? She shook her head. No. I just wanted to see the man who finally made them cry. I blinked. They cried. Oh, bald, she said. They've been grounded since yesterday. I took their phones. Told them they were lucky you didn't press charges. I almost laughed. You grounded your 35-year-old daughters. She smiled just slightly. I pay the mortgage on their house. Still counts. Then she turned and walked back to the SUV. That night, I sat on the porch again, moonlight bouncing off the rippling surface of the pool. Peaceful. Untouched. Mine again. The gate stood locked, not because I was afraid, but because it felt good to set boundaries. As I leaned back, a message popped up on my phone from an unknown number. Just so you know, you'll never be invited to the block party again. No name. But I didn't need one. I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back. Good. I've got a pool party of my own. But it's invitation only. Sent. And just like that, I put the phone down, let the summer breeze settle across my face, and listened as the crickets sang. The Karen sisters were silent now. But me? I was just getting started.